Last night, my 7-year-old daughter refused to sleep in her own bed. Her little hands shook as she whispered, "Mom, please, I don't want to stay here tonight." I thought she was just scared of the dark, or maybe another nightmare. But when I asked her why, her eyes filled with tears. She looked straight at me and said, "Because he comes into my room when you're asleep." That moment, my whole body went numb. And from that second on, I knew our home wasn't safe anymore. If you were me, what would you do? Would you confront him or protect your child in silence? Tell me in the comments. I read them all. And if stories like this move you, please like, share, and subscribe so I can keep bringing you more true stories that reveal the truth hiding behind perfect families. Every night used to be the same. Dinner at 7, bath time at 8, bedtime by 9. Lily would kiss me goodnight, hug her stuffed rabbit, and drift into dreams while I tidied up the kitchen. It was our quiet little ritual, the kind that makes you think life is safe, predictable, ordinary, until the night everything changed. That night, she refused to go to bed. At first, I thought she was just being stubborn. Kids do that sometimes, but there was something in her face I couldn't explain, a pale kind of terror, like she'd seen something no child should ever see. She clung to my arm so tightly that her nails left tiny crescent marks on my skin. "Please, Mom," she whispered, voice trembling. "Don't make me sleep in my room. I don't like it there anymore." I crouched down, trying to meet her eyes. "Why, honey? Did you have a bad dream?" Her lower lip quivered. She looked toward the dark hallway where her bedroom door stood slightly open. And then she said something that made my stomach twist. "Because he comes into my room when you're asleep." For a moment, I didn't understand. My brain refused to process it. I asked, "Who, sweetheart? Who comes into your room?" But she just shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "I can't tell you. He said you wouldn't believe me." Something cold spread through my chest. I told myself maybe she'd been dreaming, or maybe she'd overheard something on TV. Kids mix things up all the time. But the fear in her eyes, that was real. Children don't fake that kind of fear. I walked her to her room anyway, telling her softly that everything was fine. The air felt heavy, thicker somehow. When I reached for the doorknob, Lily pulled my hand back. "Don't go in there, Mommy, please." Her voice cracked on the last word. My hand was trembling as I turned the knob. The room looked perfectly normal. Pink walls, toys in their baskets, fairy lights twinkling along the headboard. But the atmosphere was wrong. It was too still, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes your heart beat louder. I checked under the bed, nothing but dust bunnies and a forgotten sock. Still, the back of my neck prickled as if someone was standing behind me. I forced a smile and told her, "See, nothing to be afraid of." But deep down, even I didn't believe that. That night, I let her sleep in my bed. She wrapped her tiny arms around me and didn't let go. Her body was shaking long after she'd closed her eyes. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying her words again and again. "He comes into my room when you're asleep." I wanted to believe she was imagining things. I wanted to be the rational mother who says, "There's nothing there, sweetheart, go back to sleep." But a part of me, the part that knows when something's wrong even without proof, whispered that this wasn't over. Around midnight, I woke up to the faint sound of footsteps, slow, careful, coming from the hallway. For a second, I thought it was just the old wood creaking under the weight of the wind. But then the floorboards outside my door groaned again, one step closer. I held my breath, listening. The house was supposed to be empty. Daniel had left for a business trip that morning. It was just me and Lily. And yet, someone was there. I pulled Lily closer, feeling her heartbeat against my chest. She stirred, half awake, and whispered, "Mom, he's here." My throat went dry. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I just stared at the dark outline beneath the door, and for a second, I swear I saw a shadow move. That was the night I realized my daughter's fear wasn't just a nightmare, it was a warning. By morning, the sunlight pouring through the curtains made everything look normal again. Or at least it tried to. Lily was sitting at the table, still in her pajamas, stirring her cereal without touching it. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and her little rabbit plushie sat on her lap like a silent witness to the night we just had. I forced a smile. See? It's morning now. No monsters in sight. She didn't smile back. Monsters don't like the sun, she murmured, eyes fixed on her bowl. The spoon clinked softly against the porcelain, a sound too small to fill the silence between us. Then Daniel walked in. He looked perfect, as always. Crisp shirt, hair neatly styled, the faint smell of cologne that once made me feel safe. He kissed my cheek, poured himself coffee, and asked, "Everything okay, girls?" Just like that, as if our house hadn't felt like a stranger's place the night before. I watched Lily freeze. She didn't answer him, didn't even look up. Her tiny hands gripped the edge of the table until her knuckles turned white. Daniel frowned. "Lily, honey, Daddy's talking to you." Still nothing. I laughed nervously, trying to lighten the moment. She didn't sleep well. Nightmares again. He sighed, took a sip of coffee, and muttered, "You really should stop letting her watch those cartoons before bed." He said it kindly, with that calm, authoritative tone he always used. The one that made everyone else think he was the perfect husband. But to me, it sounded like something else, like a warning disguised as advice. When he left for work, the air in the kitchen changed. Lily exhaled like she'd been holding her breath the whole time. I reached across the table and touched her hand. "Sweetheart, is there something you want to tell me about Daddy?" Her eyes darted toward the door he'd just walked through. Then she whispered, "He doesn't like when I talk to you." My heart sank. I wanted to ask more, but she shook her head quickly, her voice dropping to a whisper. "If he hears me, he'll be mad." That day, I couldn't focus on anything. Every corner of the house felt off. The framed family photos looked too perfect, like props. Daniel's shoes were lined up by the door in a straight military row, something he always insisted on. The more I looked around, the more I realized how much of our life was arranged by him. Where things went, when we ate, when we spoke. Even the smiles in the pictures felt rehearsed. By afternoon, I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Maybe Lily was just having separation anxiety, or maybe she'd overheard Daniel on the phone and misunderstood. I tried to believe that. God, I tried. But that night, when Daniel came home early, she ran straight to her room and locked the door. He laughed it off. Guess I'm not the favorite parent anymore. But when I looked at Lily through the crack of her door, she was sitting on the floor with her hands over her ears, whispering, "Go away, go away, go away." Something inside me broke a little that night. I lay beside Daniel in bed, staring at the ceiling, pretending to sleep. He was scrolling through his phone, smiling faintly at something I couldn't see. For the first time in years, I realized I didn't know this man beside me. I didn't know what he did when I wasn't watching. And maybe I never had. The next morning, I found Lily's bedroom light still on. Her rabbit was on the floor, and her blanket was missing. I found her curled up in the hallway, asleep against the wall. When I lifted her gently into my arms, she murmured, "I waited for you, Mommy. I didn't want to sleep there alone." That was when I made a silent promise to myself. If my daughter was afraid in her own home, something, or someone, had to change. I just didn't know yet how deep that fear went, or what kind of darkness it was hiding. The next few days, I told myself I was overthinking. Children go through phases. They imagine things, fear shadows, hear whispers that aren't there. That's what I kept repeating, a mantra to silence the voice inside me that whispered something darker. But every day the signs grew louder. It started with the baby monitor. I had set it up when Lily was 3, mostly out of habit. Now she was 7, but I still kept it on. A quiet comfort, a small reassurance that I could always hear her if she needed me. One morning, I noticed the monitor's red light blinking strangely. It wasn't the usual flicker from low battery. It was intermittent, rhythmic, like someone had switched it on and off. When I checked the footage, the file for the previous night was gone, just deleted. No trace, no timestamp. I tried to convince myself it was a technical glitch, but my stomach told another story. Then there were the smells. A faint scent of Daniel's cologne lingering in Lily's room, even when he was supposed to be away on business. At first, I brushed it off as coincidence. Maybe the scent on his jacket, maybe the air vents. But one evening, as I tucked her in, Lily whispered, "It smells like Daddy again." Her voice trembled. I looked around, forcing a smile. "Maybe he hugged you earlier, sweetheart." She shook her head. "No, it smells like him when he's angry." I froze. That night, after she fell asleep, I walked quietly through the hallway. The house was still, except for the hum of the refrigerator. When I passed by the living room, I noticed something odd. The small drawer in the TV stand slightly open. Inside was Daniel's spare phone. He always carried one, but this one was locked with a password I didn't recognize. I didn't touch it. Not yet. But a seed of dread had already taken root inside me. The next day, I tried to record Lily's room again. This time, I left my own phone hidden behind her bookshelf, camera on. When I checked it in the morning, the recording stopped at exactly 10:37 p.m. The file ended mid-frame, just static. Right before it cut off, there was a faint sound, a door creaking open. When I showed the video to Daniel, pretending it was just about the malfunction, he smiled too easily. "You and your detective games," he said, ruffling my hair. Then he added something that made my blood run cold. "You should stop leaving your phone in her room. It's creepy." I hadn't told him where I'd put it. That night, I locked my door for the first time since we moved into this house. Lily slept beside me, her little hands clutching her rabbit-like armor. I lay awake, listening. Every click of the pipes, every gust of wind made my heart race. At some point, I must have drifted off, because the next thing I knew, it was 3 a.m., and I was awake again. The house was silent, too silent. Then I heard it, a faint thud, followed by another, coming from the hallway. I sat up, barely breathing. The sound grew clearer, measured, deliberate footsteps moving toward Lily's room. I wanted to believe it was a dream, but then came the soft squeak of her doorknob turning. My skin crawled. I grabbed my phone, but the screen stayed black, dead battery. Lily stirred beside me and whispered, half asleep, "Mom, don't go. He doesn't like when you look." I didn't move. I couldn't. I stared at the shadow that stretched under my door, stopping right at the threshold. It stayed there for what felt like forever. Then, nothing. Just retreating steps, quiet, controlled. By morning, Daniel was making breakfast as if nothing had happened. He smiled, said good morning, poured coffee, and asked, "Sleep well?" I stared at him, wondering how his voice could sound so normal when everything in me screamed. It wasn't. Later that day, I checked the monitor again. The red light was blinking, steady this time. I opened the feed. And for a split second before it went black, I saw it. A figure standing in Lily's doorway, just watching. Not moving, not speaking. Just watching. After that night, I couldn't shake the image from my head. That still watching figure at Lily's door. It had been less than a second, maybe a trick of the light. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. You can't mistake the feeling of being watched. I told myself I needed proof, something solid, not just fear. So the next day, while Daniel was at work, I searched. Not like a frantic woman, but quietly, carefully, the way someone walks through a minefield. Because by now I understood. Whatever was happening in my house, it wasn't random. And Daniel, he knew more than he let on. The first place I checked was his study, a room I rarely entered. It always smelled faintly of tobacco and expensive paper, and everything was arranged perfectly. Folders in alphabetical order, pens in parallel lines. That kind of order doesn't hide chaos. It hides control. In the bottom drawer under old tax forms, I found an envelope. It was thick, unsealed. Inside were printed papers with our names, mine and Lily's, listed as dependents. But they weren't tax forms. They were insurance policies. 3 of them, all taken out in the last 6 months. The beneficiary? Daniel. My hands went cold. At first, I tried to rationalize. Maybe he wanted to protect us. Maybe it was standard family planning. But why so many? Why without telling me? And why did the amounts increase with each policy? My pulse was racing as I skimmed through the pages. Then I noticed something that made me stop breathing. The most recent policy listed an accidental death clause. Double payout if the death occurred within the home. I had to sit down. The room was spinning. My own living room, my kitchen, my daughter's bedroom. All of it suddenly felt like part of a plan I didn't understand. A plan I was never meant to see. I put everything back exactly as I found it. Every sheet, every crease. Then I locked myself in the bathroom and stared at my reflection. My face looked different. Pale, older, like I'd aged years in an hour. I whispered to myself, "You're not crazy. You saw it." But it didn't help, because what I'd seen was worse than crazy. It was calculated. That night, I tried to act normal. Daniel came home at his usual time, greeted us with the same practiced smile. He hugged Lily, kissed my forehead, and asked what was for. Dinner. I felt my skin crawl under his touch. During dinner, Lily barely spoke. She kept glancing at him, then at me, like she was waiting for me to say something, to do something. But what could I say? "Hey, honey, why did you take out multiple life insurance policies on your wife?" No. I had to be smart, careful. Later that evening, while he was taking a shower, I went to the living room to breathe. That's when I noticed a small flash drive left beside his laptop. It was unlabeled, something he'd never leave lying around. My hands shook as I plugged it into my computer. Inside, there were folders named only by dates. When I opened one, I saw photos, not family photos, not work documents. They were screenshots from our home security system, hundreds of them, each one timestamped at night, each one showing Lily's room. Some were of her sleeping, some were of her awake, sitting up, staring at the camera, terrified. And in a few, there was a shape behind her, tall, familiar, barely visible in the dark, but unmistakable once you saw it. Daniel. I couldn't breathe. My throat tightened, my hands went numb. The photos weren't new. They went back months. While I was sleeping peacefully beside him, he had been standing in her doorway, watching our daughter, night after night. I yanked the flash drive out, terrified he might come out of the shower and catch me. I shoved it into my pocket, rushed to the bedroom, and pretended to fold laundry. When he stepped out of the bathroom, his voice was calm, too calm. "Everything okay, Sarah?" I nodded quickly, forcing a smile. "Just getting things ready for tomorrow." He smiled back, but his eyes stayed on me too long. It was like he already knew. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying those images in my head. Lily's terrified face, Daniel's shadow behind her. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again. By dawn, I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just fear anymore. It was danger. And the man I'd once called my husband was no longer someone I could trust. He was someone I had to survive. By the next morning, something inside me had changed. I wasn't just afraid anymore. I was alert. Every sound, every word, every glance from Daniel felt loaded with meaning. I could feel his eyes on me longer than before, like he was watching for a mistake. I had to act before he did. When he left for work that day, I told Lily I'd pick her up early from school. I needed a few hours alone, not to rest, but to investigate. I turned off my phone location, closed the curtains, and started searching again. There was one place I hadn't checked, the garage. Daniel always kept it locked, claiming it was too dangerous because of his tools. But he'd left his keys on the kitchen counter that morning, something he never did. Maybe it was a trap, or maybe he was getting careless. The garage smelled like metal and gasoline. There was a small workbench, perfectly organized, just like the rest of him. But behind a stack of paint cans, I found a small black box, dusty and half hidden. Inside were papers, receipts, and, my heart stopped, photographs. They were of Daniel and a woman I didn't recognize. Not just any woman. She was the same one who had waved at Lily one afternoon outside the school, saying she knew her dad from work. I remembered the uneasy way Lily had hidden behind me. Now I understood why. In the photos, they looked intimate, too close. Dinner dates, hotel lobbies, one picture of them standing in front of a house I didn't recognize, holding a folder together. When I looked closer, I saw the word insurance printed faintly on the cover. My knees gave out. The truth hit like ice water. This wasn't just betrayal, it was conspiracy. They weren't just lovers, they were partners in something calculated. And I was the obstacle. I stuffed the photos and papers back into the box and ran inside. I wanted to scream, to call the police, to tell someone, anyone, but I couldn't. Not yet. He still had power. He still had control. That evening, Daniel came home earlier than usual. I had barely hidden the box back in place. He kissed me on the cheek like nothing had changed. I tried to act normal, but my hands shook as I stirred the soup. Lily sat quietly at the table, eyes fixed on her spoon. When Daniel turned to hang his jacket, she mouthed to me silently, "Don't tell him." I nearly dropped the ladle. After dinner, Daniel asked to borrow my laptop. He said his was acting up. When I hesitated, he smiled. That calm, polite smile that used to charm everyone. But I noticed something new in it, control. "I just need to check a few things, Sarah. Why are you so nervous?" He didn't wait for me to answer. He took the laptop and went into his study. The door clicked shut. For the next hour, I sat motionless on the couch, staring at that closed door. Every sound from inside, a click, a soft shuffle, made my stomach twist. At one point, I heard a faint metallic snap, like something being locked. When he came out, he looked calm, collected. He handed me the laptop. "Done," he said softly. But when I tried to open it later, all my saved files, photos, videos, notes, were gone. He had erased everything. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I locked our bedroom door, then pretended to sleep. At midnight, Daniel's phone vibrated. He didn't notice I was watching when he checked it. A message flashed briefly on the screen before he deleted it. I caught just 3 words, "When she signs." The next morning, I asked him casually, "Do you still need me to sign those papers from the insurance company?" He froze, only for a second, but I saw it. His jaw tightened before he smiled again. "Oh, those? Just standard updates. Don't worry about it." But I was worried, because I hadn't mentioned which. Papers. That night, after putting Lily to bed, I took her small hand in mine and whispered, "Sweetheart, if Mommy tells you to run, you run, okay?" She looked confused, but nodded, eyes wide and scared. Then she whispered back, "Is Daddy mad at us?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, because the truth was worse than anger. It was intent. By then, my heart knew what my mind still refused to accept, that Daniel wasn't planning to leave us, he was planning to end us. I lay awake until dawn, feeling every second crawl across the clock. When the first light touched the walls, I knew what I had to do. I would gather everything, the flash drive, the insurance papers, the photos, and go to the police. But before that, I had to make sure Lily and I made it through one more night. One last night under his roof. The next evening, everything in the house felt wrong. Heavier, quieter, like the air itself was holding its breath. Daniel was home early again. He said his meeting got cancelled, but I could feel the tension radiating off him. His smile didn't reach his eyes anymore. It was the same smile he used when trying to convince me everything was fine, right before taking something away. I spent that entire dinner pretending to be calm. Every movement felt rehearsed, pouring wine, passing the salt, laughing when he told a story about work. But my body was trembling inside. I was just waiting for the right moment, the moment to take Lily and run. After dinner, he went to his study to make a call. Through the crack of the door, I could hear his voice. Low, serious, deliberate. "It has to be soon," he said. Then a pause. "She's signing tomorrow. It'll look like an accident. No one will question it." My blood froze. I pressed my hand over my mouth, afraid even the sound of my breathing would give me away. He wasn't talking about a job. He was talking about me. I ran upstairs, heart pounding so loudly it echoed in my ears. Lily was sitting on her bed, hugging her stuffed rabbit, eyes wide. "Mommy," she whispered. He was talking to her again, the lady with the red hair. My throat tightened. "Where did you see her?" She pointed toward the window. "Outside. She was in Daddy's car." That was the final sign I needed. No more waiting, no more pretending. We had to leave. Now. I told Lily to pack her school backpack, only what she could carry. I grabbed the flash drive, the papers, the photographs, and shoved them into a tote bag. Every minute felt like an hour. The sound of my heartbeat was louder than my footsteps. When I came downstairs, Daniel was standing by the kitchen counter, still on the phone. He turned his head slightly, his voice calm but sharper than usual. "Where are you going this late?" I froze. My mind screamed, "Don't show fear." I forced a small smile. "Lily's not feeling well. I'm taking her to my sister's for the night." He tilted his head, studying me the way a cat studies a trapped mouse. Then he nodded slowly. "All right, drive safe." That should have been a relief. But the way he said it, it sounded final. I rushed Lily to the car. My hands shook as I buckled her seatbelt. The street was dark, empty, too still for that hour. As I turned the ignition, the dashboard light flickered, and the car wouldn't start. A thin smell of gasoline hit me. Then I saw it, the gas line beneath the car, cut clean. My vision blurred for a moment. He hadn't meant for me to drive away. He'd meant for me to die trying. I grabbed Lily's hand. "Out, now." We ran across the yard barefoot, through the side gate into the neighbor's driveway. Behind us, the porch light turned on. Daniel's silhouette appeared at the window, watching. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I ran until my lungs burned, until the sound of my heartbeat drowned out everything else. When we reached the end of the street, I flagged down a passing car, a woman with her teenage son inside. She saw the panic in my face and didn't ask questions. She drove us straight to my sister's house 2 towns away. Once inside, I locked every door, every window. Lily clung to me, whispering, "Mommy, is he going to find us?" I didn't answer right away. I just held her, feeling the weight of her tiny heartbeat against mine. Then I said softly, "Not anymore, baby. Not anymore." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't over. Daniel was still out there, and people like him don't stop until they're exposed. That night, after Lily finally fell asleep, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the flash drive. It felt like a weapon. Small, silent, but powerful enough to destroy everything he'd built. And I knew exactly what I had to do next. At sunrise, I would take it, all of it, to the police. No more silence, no more pretending. He had set the trap, but I was the one who was going to end it. At sunrise, I drove straight to the police station. Lily stayed with my sister, still asleep, her little face finally peaceful after nights of fear. I wanted to believe we were safe now, but my hands were still trembling on the steering wheel. Because the truth is, when you've lived in fear long enough, safety doesn't feel real. It feels borrowed. The station smelled like old paper and coffee. A young officer at the front desk asked what I needed. When I said, "I want to report my husband," his expression changed. He led me to a small interview room and closed the door behind me. I told them everything, every detail, the insurance papers, the deleted footage, the photos, the phone calls. At first, the detective listening, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, seemed skeptical, until I pulled the flash drive from my pocket. He inserted it into his laptop, and within seconds, the room fell silent. On the screen, there were the images. Daniel standing in Lily's doorway at night, watching her, over and over again. The detective's jaw tightened. "You said your daughter is 7?" I nodded, unable to speak. He clicked through the next folder, the emails, the transfers, the documents showing the policies in Daniel's name. Each one a piece of the puzzle that finally made sense. He exhaled slowly. "Mrs. Walker, you did the right thing." He stood, whispered something to another officer, and they left the room together. I sat there alone for what felt like hours, clutching Lily's rabbit in my lap. When they came back, the detective's face was different, harder, more resolved. "We're issuing a warrant. He won't hurt you again." I should have felt relieved, but I didn't. Not yet. Not until I knew he was gone. By noon, the detective called me. His voice was calm, steady. "Mrs. Walker," he said, "your husband has been arrested." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I sat there staring at the wall, listening as he explained how they'd found him at a diner on Route 6, meeting the same red-haired woman from the photos. They'd been discussing how to finalize the accident paperwork. When I hung up, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I didn't cry. Not at first. It was like my body didn't know how. But then Lily came running into the room. My sister had told her we were safe, and she wrapped her arms around me. That's when the tears came. Not loud, not violent, just quiet streams that wouldn't stop. For days I couldn't stop thinking about the moment they put handcuffs on him. The same hands that used to hold me, the same smile that once made me feel loved. It was all a mask. And the worst part wasn't losing him. It was realizing he'd been gone long before I ever noticed. When the detective showed me the full report, I learned everything. The affair, the planned payout, the staged car malfunction. He had even set up a meeting with a mechanic to make it look like he'd tried to fix it. Every detail calculated, every lie rehearsed. It was almost surgical. But the part that hurt most was what they found in his phone. Messages between him and that woman. "She's too trusting," he wrote in one. "Tomorrow, it's done." Tomorrow. If Lily hadn't begged me to leave that night, tomorrow might have been our last day alive. When I left the station, the sunlight felt different. It wasn't warm exactly, more like a weight lifting slowly off my chest. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe without fear of what waited behind my door. Justice doesn't erase the pain. It doesn't give you back the nights you spent awake, staring into the dark. But it gives you something else, the power to say, he doesn't control me anymore. That evening, as I tucked Lily into bed at my sister's house, she asked, "Mommy, is Daddy gone?" I hesitated, then said softly, "Yes, baby. He's gone." She looked up at me with sleepy eyes and whispered, "Then can I sleep in my room now?" I brushed her hair away from her face and nodded, and for the first time, she closed her eyes without fear. It took weeks before I stopped waking up in the middle of the night. For a long time, every creak of the floor, every gust of wind against the window still made my body tense. That kind of fear doesn't disappear just because the danger is gone. It lingers, like a shadow that refuses to leave. But one morning, something changed. I woke up to sunlight, not harsh, not blinding, soft, golden light spilling through thin curtains. Lily was sleeping beside me, her small hand curled around her rabbit, breathing evenly. For the first time in months, her face looked peaceful. No frown, no restless movements, just a child, finally allowed to be a child again. We had moved into a small apartment near the park. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, old wooden floors, the faint smell of paint that never quite faded. But to me, it felt like freedom. Every corner was ours, every door open to peace, not secrets. The first few days, Lily followed me everywhere. Even when I brushed my teeth, she'd stand at the door, watching quietly, as if making sure I wouldn't disappear. I never told her the full truth. I said her dad made some bad choices, and that we were safe now. She didn't ask for more. Maybe she already knew. At night, I'd read her stories about brave little girls who found their way home, about mothers who never gave up. She liked those best. Sometimes when I closed the book, she'd whisper, "That's us, right, Mommy?" And I'd smile, my throat tightening. "Yes, baby, that's us." The court hearings dragged on for months. Each session was like reopening a wound I thought had already healed. Seeing Daniel in that courtroom, handcuffed, silent, eyes cold, was harder than I expected. Not because I missed him, but because I couldn't recognize him anymore. The man I once loved was gone long before the police came. All that remained was the stranger who planned our ending. When the final verdict came, guilty on all counts, I didn't cheer. I just exhaled. Slowly, deeply, as if letting go of years of breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Justice doesn't bring joy, it brings quiet. And sometimes quiet is enough. Lily and I built new routines. Saturday mornings in the park, pancakes with too much syrup. We started taking photos again, real ones with laughter and messy hair. I kept them on the fridge, not to forget what happened, but to remind myself how far we'd come. Sometimes, when I watch her run ahead of me, sunlight catching in her hair, I wonder how something so broken could ever feel whole again. But healing isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing life every single day, even when your heart still shakes. One evening, as we walked home from the park, Lily slipped her hand into mine. "Mom," she said softly, "can we stay here forever?" I looked down at her, those same big brown eyes that had once seen too much, and smiled. "Yes, baby, forever sounds perfect." Now, every morning, when I pour coffee and watch the city wake up outside our window, I whisper a quiet promise to myself. Never again. Never again will I ignore the voice that tells me something's wrong. Never again will I mistake fear for safety. And never again will I let someone else decide what peace looks like for us. Because we survived, because she believed me, because love, real love, is what saved us in the end. I still don't know when fear turned into strength. Maybe it was the moment I chose to listen to my daughter, or maybe it was the moment I finally chose myself. If you've ever had to rebuild your life from fear, you know it's not easy, but it's possible. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to start over, and what helped you find peace again? I read every story you share. They remind me we're never truly alone. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe so I can keep bringing you more real stories of strength, truth, and rebirth. With love and respect, this is Sister Sephora, and I'll see you in the next story.